Hello, everybody. Welcome to Expression Pass here on Boss Rush Network. I'm your host, and lots excited Eddie V. Joining me is the one, the only Bossman himself, Mr. Corey Dirrig. Hello, good sir.
Edward kidnapped me and was making me record more podcasts.
No. How did I do that? Oh, no, wait. You're taller than me. You're taller, stronger than me.
That doesn't mean anything.
Hi,
Ed.
Hi. Corey, we are kind of at the final point before the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, releasing on June 5th. Hopefully people were able to get a pre-order in. And so with this episode, it's going to be a wrap-up about our last three systems, the Game Boy, Super Nintendo, and the NES. We're talking about the launch lineup. And so I think we're going to still go backwards and start with the Game Boy, because it only had like 5 games for it. So with those 5 games, it was Tetris, Super Mario Land, Alleyway, Baseball, and Tennis.
Cool.
I remember getting my Game Boy for Christmas. Tetris was packed in, and Super Mario Land was my second game. But then I also got the Ninja Turtles game when it came
Fall
out.
of the Foot Clan.
Yep.
Oh, what a banger. That was a... if I find the box anywhere, I will have that game complete in boxes. I have the inserts in the game, but not the box. Also, Pokemon Red, if I can find a box for cheaper than $150.
Ooh.
Dude, just the box for that game sells more than most games.
That's bonkers. I know for me, anyone who bought like the Game Boy games during that time, they came in that plastic case around the game inside the box. So it's kind of like, you think of a compact, you could, open it up and then put your game in and then close it, and it'll be, be with you and stuff. Like, you'll be protected from the dust and everything. Yeah, I got my Game Boy like at Christmas. Mostly with my Nintendo consoles, I always got them at Christmas. So NES I got for Christmas, Super Nintendo I got for Christmas, Game Boy, N64 I got that all for Christmas. And then I started buying my consoles, starting with the GameCube, and I bought like pretty much everything else. Besides my Wii U. My Wii U was no, not my Wii U. I bought my Wii U, and I bought my Switch. I got as a birthday gift. That was it. No. I bought my Switch too because I bought that on Ledway. What system? It was my Wii U. It was my mom did give me a Wii U.
Nice. So I remember my Game Boy. I remember when my grandma got it for me. She bought it. I got Tetris and just boxing, just generic boxing. Those were the 2 games I had for it. But I didn't really. I mean, like I knew I knew what video games were because of like arcades, and like my dad had an Atari 2600, right? Or maybe it was a 5200. I'm not 100% sure which one it was. But like I didn't know, like I was too young to know like anything else, right? And so I got a Game Boy, and that was like the first time I was like really understanding what video games were. And my grandma got me the Game Boy with this kind of like black case, right, that zipped and had like a shoulder strap on it. And I had Tetris and boxing, and my cousin ended up getting me Ninja Turtles and Mario, and those were like the only games I had for it for a long time. Like for a long time, to the point where like I'm pretty sure Tetris is the only game I ever played on Game Boy after like I got my NES and Genesis,
Uh-huh.
uh, and Ninja Turtles because like I didn't care about anything else. I thought the Mario game was pretty bad. So I think Super Mario Land is really bad. Uh, but I'm pretty sure like the next game and like when I was really starting to get back into Game Boy was Pokemon. Like I got a
Wow.
Game Boy, I got a silver Game Boy Pocket, which was awesome. And I tried to color it blue because I wanted a blue one. And I took Sharpie to the back of it. And so like then I was like, this was a huge mistake, and I tried to like clean it. That's a whole story for another day. But and then they started making like the Game Boy Color specific games, or that's the Zelda game I have. That was my first Zelda game, was Zelda Link's Awakening DX, the one I have it complete inbox, right? And so, I was really into that for a while, and the Mario Golf for Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Color, was awesome. Uh so yeah, Game Boy was like a weird system that faded and then came back, which I guess, that was kind of the console, or that was kind of the life of the console anyway, right? Because it kind of, I don't want to say died when like the Super Nintendo came out, but like it definitely had a resurgence when Pokemon came out, right? So
Yes.
um and then the NES, I don't even remember how I got my NES, honestly. I just, it appeared in my house one day, I guess. Um and then I never had a Super Nintendo. I always went over to my friend's house to play Super Nintendo. Like I had the Genesis, he had the Super Nintendo. We would just play those together. And as much as I really love Genesis, I still, Super Nintendo's better in my opinion. I don't think that's a hot take by any stretch by anyone, but you know, um, yeah. I mean, though that's my history with Super Nintendo is very limited to my friend's house, and then my cousin started like getting rid of stuff to pay rent or buy drugs. I'm not sure which one it is at this point, but um, the one thing on his list to get rid of was the Super Nintendo, so I took it. I took it from his house. Maybe of him or not knowing. I'm not sure yet.
Oh.
uh, but I still have it to this day, his Super Nintendo, and yeah, I tried to play stuff on it, but at that point, like N64 was out and it was over, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just over. So that was my history with Super Nintendo. I played at my friend's house and I stole one.
Uh,
uh,
well, I know for me, like going with Game Boy, um, I once I like I said, I had Tetris, I had Super Mario Land, I had Turtles. My down button wasn't working, so I couldn't duck. I had to
mm,
like press it really hard. But then I got like Pokemon Blue. I got Link's Awakening, and then just some like Legend of Mystical Ninja, like some other games and stuff I started getting when it came to my Super Nintendo. And to let everybody know that launch lineup, it had Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Gradius 3, and Sim City. So when I got my Super Nintendo, the system and a lot of more games were out because I had Super Mario World, even though I beat the game at my best friend's house, right, like my neighbor right next to me. I also got Turtles in Time. So like that was like my two games that I had on it. And then I built it up to like The Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Street Fighter 2, Super Metroid, uh Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Like I was big on Konami, like Contra 3 and stuff. But then I started playing like Ren and Stimpy, Krusty Clown, and stuff like that. Some of the claim games like Double Dragon. I think that was a claim. Mortal Kombat 1. My mom took me to Target to go get Mortal Kombat 2 on my Super Nintendo. And this is when the ESRB was kind of formed, and I was able to, play Mortal Kombat 2 with all the bloods and fatalities. Didn't care about any of that. Just cared about playing the game and getting better so I could play the arcade game. But then I had like Rama Half. I had some wrestling games on there like SmackDown and stuff. Um, yeah, I was like big into my Super Nintendo. Um, Definitely with RPGs, games like ActRaiser, was big. Chrono Trigger, was big. Then Mega Man X and Mega Man X2 and stuff like. And that's when I really got into renting because then NBA Jam came out. So like my Super Nintendo history was big, was huge. Um,
Yeah. I mean, Super Nintendo was pretty revolutionary. Like at one point I wanted a Super Nintendo over an N64 because A,
mhm.
it was cheap, and B, it was cheaper, and it was probably going to be widely available and already had a bunch of games out for it, right? So plus, like, it was the cool redesign of the Super Nintendo, and they had the Mario All Stars Plus World pack in at that point, right? And I was really wanting to play those in particular, and the Donkey Kong games, and Turtles in Time, and
Mhm.
Mickey's Magical Quest, and then there was a bunch of games that I had never played on there, right? Like, I had always heard about this Final Fantasy series, right? Like, well, not always, but
Uh,
like as I started paying more attention to games, I started hearing about that, and um, exploring like all these other things. But then N64 came out, and I was like, oh well, this is over. So don't care.
uh, Man, Final Fantasy 3, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore. Yeah, those was my games and everything.
Hmm.
Um, while playing the Sega Genesis, like Hyperstone
Hmm.
Heist and Streets of Rage and Street of Rage 2 and Joe Montana 1 and 2 and Michael Jackson Moonwalker and stuff like. Um, because my brother was a Sega kid, so I used to play all of those games too.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
So
mean, the Genesis had some good games. I'm not trying to say that. Like, Hyperstone Heist is arguably better than Turtles of Time in my opinion, but uh, and Rocket Knight Adventure, and
yeah.
uh, some of these other games, Sonic Spinball, you know.
You just wanted me to react to that.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and then obviously like all the weird stuff you could do with Genesis, like the Sega CD and
Mhm.
32X and
Uh,
Sega Channel and Game Genie, and like all these, just the Sonic and Knuckles kind of plug-in thing, like
the
all
32X.
weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. And then obviously like people wanted to play fighting games there because they had the six face button
Mhm.
controller that came out later. And yeah, Sega was weird, but I think in a lot of ways ahead of their time. But a lot of these companies that are ahead of their time kind of fade, right? I mean, Sega Channel was like Game Pass before Game Pass, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then we can get into all this kind of stuff with Sega at some point, but like, I don't know, say, discs, right? That was a big thing that Sega did and Nintendo didn't, right? And PlayStation was obviously exploring that with Nintendo at one point, and
Oh,
uh
it's Sony. Yeah.
yeah, and but at the end of the day, I think this is always the case where like you have to have the games, right? And the games that people want, and Sega had some great arcade style games, but not, I mean, what Beyond Oasis is nowhere near close to being Zelda, and
Mm-mm.
Fantasy Star is interesting, but nowhere near what Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger were, or the 800 other RPGs on the Super Nintendo.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, and Super Nintendo had the games and had the support, and the better versions of the multi-platform games. So
All right. Genesis had Sega had support, but Sega was also supporting their own sales. Like, yeah, they didn't have Final Fantasy, but they had Fantasy Star because that's a Sega first party game. You know, even with Beyond Oasis and stuff, like that was
I would
their own
also,
type of. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I would also argue that Genesis was probably the place for sports games too, right? A lot of,
Yeah,
you know,
because the first NBA Live came out on Genesis. It wasn't
mm,
on Super Nintendo till I think Bulls versus Blazers. I think that's the first one on Super Nintendo.
not sure. I don't remember, man. I just remember playing Pat Riley basketball on
Oh,
Genesis, and there was no,
love that game.
the teams were not real.
But I remember being in the full campaign in one sitting.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was good and I had fun, but like,
yeah.
oh,
and
good times.
and, and everybody, we're going to talk about the NES launch with Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Excite Bite, Ice Climbers, 10-Yard Fight, Baseball, Clue Clue Land, Golf, Gyromite, Hogan's Alley, Kung Fu, Pinball, Soccer, Stack Up, Tennis, Wild Gunman, and Wrecking Crew. Or Wrecking Crew, I should say. Um, I I got my Super Nintendo late. Even though I played like Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Excite Bite, I did play Ice Climbers. I played golf. I played Gyromite with with Rob the Robot. I did play Wrecking Crew. Um, but I also, but man, shoot, like I had, played Contra, played TMNT, the first Turtles game, and then TMN2, the arcade game. I played the first, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Kid Nick Eye, Bad Dudes. Ninja Gaiden was like hard as ever. But I remember renting that from a rental store where, like, I guess I think it was on Tuesdays. If you rent a game, they give you free bag of popcorn and
Mm.
everything for every rent that you did. So I rented Ninja Gaiden on NES because I used to play at I was when my granddad was alive, I would go with him to go to the laundromat and they had the Ninja Gaiden arcade game and I would play the arcade game there. So I would witness the death scene because of the continues. Because my granddad would only give me like 50 cents, and that was it.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I mean, that was, Ninja Turtles was like that for me, where like I would basically get to that third level where you're in the sewer and that was it.
huh.
I mean, I
I
got that was pretty good for a young kid, but still.
I got to the Technodrome and like actually beat it, got inside the first part of the Technodrome, and then died and game over. It's like
Mm,
dang nabbit.
that's rough.
Because I was able to get past the on the C part
Hmm.
and everything. Um,
Yeah,
so
lighting the bombs. All right.
yeah, I did that. I also played, I mentioned in Nintendo Power Block Kung Fu. I played that one. And stuff. Um, played Life Force, which was a game like come from Konami, which was part of the Gradius. Ghosts and Goblins, man, Ghouls and Ghosts, I should say. That game was hard still, and still hard. Could never get past the first level with it. Double Dragon, where I learned how to get all your hearts on the second level during the construction area. It was a cheat kind of thing, and you had to have the bat. You had to knock the enemy at one part out, and then go back up the fence, go to the left, and then come back, climb down the fence, the enemy will be gone, but it's still there, and you just start swinging the bat till you get to the points where all your hearts come. Um, like I remember that, and then Double Dragon 2, got that for my birthday and beat that game, but that was hard. I had to cheat though, because I had to do the 2-player cheat where if you beat up the second player, you get 7 lives and stuff. So RCA program, Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3. The wizard made everyone want Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah.
And I remember Nintendo had like a play test. So if you put a quarter in, you got 5 minutes to play the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was strange. I mean, that was seeing Mario on arcade machines is weird.
Mm.
Like, it's just, it's just a strange kind of an anomaly, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. Like, remember when Arcade Archives put out versus Super Mario Brothers, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
man, that's like so weird because it's not Mario. It's Mario, but it's not. It's just like this weird alternate dimension version of Mario.
But man, I remember playing Mario on the 2600, Atari 2600, and be like, "What is this?
Yeah.
Mario Brothers?" And then it realized that Nintendo made it on for Atari, and then Super Mario Brothers was just like, I'm like, so. And I got confused because I'm just like, is Mario Brothers the first game, and then Super Mario Brothers is like the second game, but the first for Nintendo? It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely weird. It's just it's
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you gotta get people's attention somehow, right? So
I played Wrath of the Mystical Ninja. I played Shinobi on the Nintendo Tengen. Uh, they stole the information from Nintendo on how to bypass the chip and stuff. So I played and beat Shinobi on the NES.
that's weird. Was it the weird version with like Spider-Man in it and stuff?
I think so, yeah.
And Batman
Because
and
Shinobi was a Sega game. That was a first party Sega game. I'm like, the heck is this doing on Super Nintendo? I mean, on Nintendo. I'm like, this is weird.
yeah. Not they were doing some weird stuff over there.
I had, of course, Ninja Gaiden 2 and stuff.
Yeah.
That's where we got and then the Konami code for Contra.
Yeah. Konami code, everybody. Konami code.
Yeah, because I that's when I stopped. I would beat it with the 30-man, but then I stopped doing it. And then just like, let me play Contra the way that it's intended.
Yeah. What a time. What a strange time.
I never beat the first Castlevania, but I beat Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest.
Yeah, see, I never had any experience with like that's my whole thing with this whole 3 generations where like I didn't have any older siblings to like show me games, right? Or were talking about games. My cousins, the cousins that were interested in games, like were my age, so like they didn't they didn't know either. My one cousin who was older showed me Double Dragon, right, on NES.
Yeah.
And that was how I figured out what Double Dragon was. And then obviously as I got a little bit older and started paying a little bit of attention and started subscribing to Nintendo Power and learned about all these other things, like I started knowing, but like I had no idea what Castlevania was until like the N64 games came out.
Oh wow.
Just like no idea what it was, you know, or like I knew what Mega Man was, but I had only seen Mega Man on TV in like Captain N, right? And not
Yes.
I never played Mega Man until like I think until they came to the what was it the the Wii shop at some point, like through Virtual Console. I had
Yeah.
never played a Mega Man game until then.
Oh wow.
Um, you know, so a lot of these like classic quote unquote games from these eras are just totally lost on me. I have no, you know, the world could be lying to me about these games, like how great they are, and I just would have no idea. Which is why I think these collections on current consoles are really important, right? Like
Yeah.
Castlevania, and I purchased them all with the intention of playing them at some point. Um, you know, it's the same with PlayStation 1 also, right? Where like I never played any of those games, right? Like until like the PS2 had come out and I bought Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 and Origins and Tactics, right? Like I bought them all intending to play them and I did. I played 9 extensively and I played 8 pretty extensively and I got partway through 7 and hated every minute of it. uh
Oh
but you know, that's what I mean, that's when I discovered like Final Fantasy Tactics, and then you know War of the Lions came to PSP later, obviously, and it was amazing. That game is incredible.
hmm
Um, so yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of this era that I missed and still haven't gone back to play. You know, like Super Nintendo specifically, right? Like games we talk about all the time, where like personally still have never played A Link to the Past or Super Metroid or Final Fantasy 4 and 6, 2 and 3, whatever you want to call them. Mega Man X, you know, anything you would probably consider a classic besides
yes.
Mario and Donkey Kong, like probably haven't played it on Super Nintendo. You know, which is like why NSO is so great theoretically for someone like me who like is super into games and the history of games specifically, but never really experienced some of these games. You know,
Right. And plus,
so,
you got like the rewind feature for, you know, to
hmm
help you progress through these games and stuff.
yeah.
Everything.
And every time there's like a retro collection that comes out, like I'm probably gonna buy it because for that reason specifically, you know.
Right.
Even like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and like the Castlevania Advance and DS collections, like I never played any of those games, you know? Like I, I just never played Castlevania and I was like never really interested, but
hmm
like it's such an important series that like I feel like I need to go back and play them at some point, you know, regardless. And Mega Man and you know all these other ones. So if there's a retro collection out there, I will probably buy it.
But I did. Yeah, I know. For me, um, I was just thinking of movie title games. The only
Hmm.
three that I play, I believe this is three. Oh, I know I played Jurassic Park on Genesis, but that's a rental. It's nothing that I own or anything. The ones that I own were Batman from Sunsoft on the NES, Adam's Family for the Super Nintendo by Ocean, and then Spider Man on the GameCube by Activision. Those are kind of like the only three during the during those releases, during those times or those eras, of movie licensed games that I actually bought and played.
Hmm.
It's still out the best. The it's still like Batman is like the best out of all three of those. Man, Batman soundtrack is good on
Hmm.
NES.
Yeah. And like I really hope some of these games with licensing nightmares kind of
hmm
get that worked out because you know it's important to have those games out there, right? Like that's why I think like the Disney, you know, retro game collections are so important, like the Aladdin and whatever one, like the one with like what Aladdin, Jungle Book, something else in it, right? That's why Way
Yeah.
Forward's DuckTales remake was so cool and important. So
Yeah, I remember a ladder in Super Nintendo. Um,
mhm.
I beat that one
Yeah, see,
during the original.
I only ever played the Genesis one. So when I played the Super Nintendo one, it's like totally different. You know,
Yeah, it,
it's like a proper platformer, and like you throw the apples, and like
yeah,
it's weird. It's I mean it's cool, but it's super weird.
because like to get 100%, you had to collect all those gems
Hmm.
in the game. And I think for the Sega Genesis one, I think all you needed to do was survive and beat the level. Uh,
Yeah. So
so Disney was weird with a lot of their games because it's like the good Disney games came from Capcom. I don't know about so much for the Sega Genesis uh, with it.
yeah, yeah, it was definitely strange for sure. Um, but
Tower of Illusion was good though on Sega Genesis.
Castle of Illusion,
Castle of Illusion, yeah, not Tower. I'm sorry.
yeah, it was okay. I wasn't that into it, but you know, it was okay.
Yeah. And then like the Super Nintendo had Super Game Boy on there where you had the cartridge in, you were able to play Game Boy games in color, I should
Hmm.
say.
Yeah, man, Game Boy Game Boy. When they put out that color system, man, that was like a
Hmm.
game changer. Like you know,
Oh
I mean, obviously, like you know, we had you know the Game Gear, right, and the Nomad from Sega,
yes,
which the Nomad was essentially the Switch before the Switch. Uh, but you know, the battery life on those things were like 12 minutes, and
right.
the Game Gear took 6 AA batteries to power for a screen like smaller than the Game Boy Pockets, at least. So, but like you know, it had color and a backlight and great sound and 4 face buttons and like or not 4. There were 4 buttons on there at somewhere. I think maybe it had shoulder buttons. I don't remember. Game Gear's weird, but essentially, like you know, it was cool that did all that. But like the Game Boy was the Game Boy, and when it had
Right.
color, you know, it became a game changer. And then you know, obviously, the Game Boy Advance when it came out had the SP had the backlight and the you know, it was
Hmm.
that's what everybody was waiting on was that backlight. You could have gone another probably 5 or 10 years with a with a black and white screen as long as the backlight was there, right on the Game Boy Pocket at least. Um, but yeah, I mean, when Game Boy added color, that was like it was
A miracle.
revolutionary. You would have
Right. And it
thought it
was
was like the greatest thing ever invented.
and it was still running off of like 4 batteries, 4 AA batteries.
Yeah.
And then
So
I think then the Game Boy Color like get like lime green and red and purple and like solid
oh yeah.
colors.
Yeah, it had a whole line of solid colors. There was also some translucent ones, and then they had the
Hmm.
Pokemon one, right? And like some other special ones.
Yeah, I think that's when we started learning about special editions of consoles and handhelds.
Right, because
Um,
around the same time that, you know, N64 started coming out in all those different colors, and then there was that, you know, the first N64 one that I remember was the
mhm.
green one for Donkey Kong, right? And it came with the yellow
Yeah,
controller, the translucent green with the yellow controller.
yeah.
And then they came out with a bunch of colors, and then they had that weird, remember when Hey You Pikachu came out and it was that
Oh yes.
nasty long N64 with Pikachu on the side of it, but it was
Uh,
like
with his big
really large.
face.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just
What
like
a
this has to be a Japan exclusive because
but it wasn't. That's the thing.
Because I'm just like, no way they're gonna bring this to America,
And they did.
and they did. uh, because because the iMac was doing that kind of clear color thing.
Yep. Yeah, it was quite the 90s thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I was wondering, I'm just like, was that during the 90s, the N64 era?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Late 90s.
because you would have the translucent color at the top. It did. Was it gray at the bottom or
I mean, it was
something?
still that like charcoal gray base, right? But like the
Yeah,
entire top shell of the console was translucent.
for the iMac.
Oh, the iMac. The base was gray or white or whatever you want to call it. And the back shell was translucent, and then the frame around the screen was gray. But then the
Okay,
mouse was translucent. Like the buttons on the mouse were translucent. That was before the one button Mac mouse.
because the N64, all of that was translucent besides the
Uh-huh.
bottom part. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yep.
yeah, because Game Boy Color, I think only the purple was translucent. I think no, they had a clear one
They
also.
had the clear one because they wanted to do it was like a because the original Game Boy also had a translucent one that I think a lot of people kind of forget exists. And that black one, remember the black one?
Oh, that black one was nice.
Yeah, it was cool. And I had never seen it in person, but I always see pictures of it. And I'm like, man, that black Game Boy is like super sleek.
I thought the NES was no. Someone custom made a black one for the NES.
Yeah, because the only thing different about the NES was when they redesigned it with that dog bone controller, like in the early
Yeah,
90s, right? And that everybody forgets exists, the top loader,
yeah. I've
which was like,
never seen that one in the stores.
oh, really, man? The retro game shop or like the used game store right up the street from me
Yeah.
always has one in stock somewhere.
Oh
Always.
wow.
But like, I almost bought it when it was $100, and like, I was like, man, because I remember they had a top loader NES and they had the redesigned Super Nintendo, which
Yeah.
the redesigned Super Nintendo, in my opinion, is such a good looking console to the point where like I prefer that over the original design.
I forgot how it looked. Go ahead, keep talking,
It's just
Corey.
like this rounded. It's like this rounded console with like round purple button. It's really nice looking. I think it's nice looking. Um, but yeah, I just you know this these generations, except for maybe the Game Boy, is like this is where my gaming stuff like really trails off.
Uh
Like I wish I had more knowledge about this generation.
uh yeah. But I'm like, yeah, I think I think that's where my love for Nintendo kind of developed and began was NES and Super Nintendo and Game Boy and stuff. And why I had nothing to get Sega because I played it. When I got to the N64 versus PlayStation thing, I was just like, I'm more N64 than I am PlayStation. I mean, I ended up getting both and stuff, but I was just like, PlayStation was my second time that I stepped out because I had the TurboGrafx 16 and
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
So, um, I bought more games for PlayStation 1 because I was getting closer to having I had my job. I was getting close to getting out of high school, and so when I got to college and started working and stuff, I was picking up still PlayStation 1 games, but also like renting and buying old N64 games. And then when uh GameCube came out and PlayStation 2 came out on Xbox, it was like GameCube. then PlayStation 2 Slim, and then it was the Xbox because when they had the S design for the controller and stuff. But like a lot of my love for Nintendo was because of those three systems: NES, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, um, anything else, Corey?
Um, no, it's just these were really um interesting kind of uh consoles because I mean there's just a lot there that it's an interesting couple of generations because it's kind of like the beginning of video games at home, right? I mean, I know like
Hmm.
Atari and the Magnavox Odyssey and ColecoVision, all these other things kind of existed beforehand,
Yes.
but this was like after the crash in the 80s, like this was like the beginning of gaming at home, right? And so this is kind of when this is the era everybody kind of thinks of when gaming really began at home and like the evolution of gaming from this point on, right? Um it's just really interesting to look at the games that are quote unquote classics and how a lot of those franchises are still around today, like
Mhm.
Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Street Fighter, Mega Man, maybe to an extent. Uh, all these franchises are just like Castlevania kind of still going, in different ways, right? With the TV show and these collections. And it's just really Final Fantasy, obviously, still going. Dragon Quest. So you just look at these and think, man, we watch these franchises grow and it's a unique perspective because we're never going to, no other generation is going to experience what we have experienced with games, right? Like seeing these franchises grow like this or companies rise and fall and rise again, right? Like Sega
Hmm.
or um, Atari, even to a lesser extent, of being at the top and then falling so far and finally clawing their way back into relevance. Like nobody's really ever going to see that again. You know, we're the generation that saw it, and uh, that's cool. And this is kind of
Yeah.
like the rebirth of gaming at home is really cool to see it evolve from here. So
Yeah. I think that's um, a good way to put a bow on it. Because of, like for us, it's just like yes, it's the launch games, but it's just like the games that we played on these systems and the memories that we created playing these games.
yeah, and I think like yeah, we called this series the launch, but like look how many games we talked about that are important to
Hmm.
games regardless, like and important for these generations regardless. And I mean, what are we going to talk about? Two games for N64 for an hour or so? No, but like
So,
look how legendary that library is. Look how
yeah.
legendary the Super Nintendo library. Are we really only going to talk about Super Mario World for an hour and a half? No, but
I
Tetris,
mean,
no. And like the NES has kind of like this accepted release date in Mario and all these other games, but like the most fascinating fact about arguably the most influential video game ever made, nobody knows the exact date that it came out.
right.
And it's just kind of because like yes, the NES has a release date and Mario kind of came out alongside it, right? But like there were test markets and it was released early in certain areas and
Hmm.
the NES was released earlier than its quote unquote release date in certain area like big market cities like New York and probably LA and Seattle, places like that, right? And so like but like there is no record of the first sale of Super Mario Brothers, which is just
right. And like, to this may be me, but when I got my Nintendo, I had a pack-in which was double games with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt together.
Mm-hmm.
It was that edition. Like, I've never seen not Pac-Man. I've never seen Duck Hunt sold separately or Super Mario sold separately until like almost the end of the NES life cycle.
Yeah, I've never seen Super Mario Brothers not packed with something, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Duck Hunt or the 3 games, right? What was it? Track and Field, right? Was the third game?
Yeah. Because
Yeah, so like
my next door neighbor had that version.
the Track and Field one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the box I have for my NES, which I don't really understand how this happened, but like the box I have for the NES is the one that comes with the pad for Track and Field. And the box
Yep.
has Track and Field on it, but I only have the version of Mario with Mario and Duck Hunt. I don't have the pad and I only have the gun. So, and I have the orange gun. I don't have the original gray one. Right? Because the original Zapper was gray and it looked too much like a real gun, so they started making it orange. So
crazy.
Even in the 80s, man.
Yeah, because me and my friend, we would do Track and Field over his house and getting on the pad, be like, or we'll get down and start banging with our hands, trying to trick it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, video games are great. This is where it's started for us, essentially. Like, I mean, I know. Yeah. It's just really cool.
Yes. Well, with that, everybody, that's going to be it for this episode, Expansion Pass. We have gone through all the launch lineups besides the Nintendo Switch. But like, check out the history for all of these consoles. Come watch these videos. If you want to see more, but you want to see them in events, for just even $1 at our Patreon, we get you early access to our videos. With that, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Expansion Pass. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, Retro Stoy, and Christian S. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.